Welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast, a show about innovations, technology, and leaders in the recruitment industry. Brought to you by TalkPush, the leading recruitment automation platform.
Hello, and welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast. Today, I'm honored to have on our show the Executive Vice President at Cielo, Sally Hunter. Welcome to the show, Sally.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Sally, what does an executive vice president do? Or rather, what do you do at Cielo? You explained to me you're managing your customers. That's a broad remit.
So I'm responsible for all of our clients and client delivery across the EMEA region and also some of our global customers. So that is operational delivery and performance, but also how we manage those contracts, continuous improvement, innovation, and really drive the thinking with the customers that we partner with.
Okay. And Cielo, I think anybody in the recruitment industry should know what you do, but perhaps shed some light on what's happened to this company. I believe you've had a change in ownership recently.
Sure, no problem. So we're the leading pure play RPO business globally. And you're right, we're private equity backed and secured a new backer at the start of 2019. So we are now backed by Permira, and that is a good match to our global footprint. So over the course of both organic and inorganic growth, we're now in every continent and supporting clients across all of those geographies. And that's with hubbed locations in places like Manila, Singapore, Dubai, London, Budapest, Buenos Aires. So it's really about us being able to be where our customers need us to be, but also being able to leverage a tech infrastructure and a platform that gives us real flex and scale across those hubs, because inevitably we still have a lot of team members that are high proximity to our clients. So they are either on site or near site and providing that support as well as what comes from the center.
All right. Well, right now you don't know where they are, right? They're in front of their computer somewhere, and you hope it's close to their customer, and maybe they all moved to Costa Rica or something.
No, and it's a great point. We flipped to home working pretty much overnight, and that's been a really interesting dynamic for all of us, that we've been driving those virtual conversations for years. So often customers really want to see recruiters, but actually it doesn't add value to what they're delivering, and they're not necessarily spending time with stakeholders in the way that an on-site role should do. So what's really interesting coming through COVID is that actually it accelerates those conversations to make sure that people are where we can access the best talent, not necessarily high proximity to the customer from a presenteeism perspective. So, shame on us if we don't take advantage of that and shift the model.
That's absolutely how I feel, that on one hand, the governments and the travel regulators made it difficult for people to travel. And as a response, actually borders are kind of melting. As a response, we can hire everywhere in the world. And now it doesn't seem like such a stretch of the imagination. And I service a lot of the call center and the BPO industry at TalkPush. And I think we're seeing a lot of activity that may not even have happened in a different context. Even though the economy is suffering, there's a lot of work being sent offshore. How is the labor? Are you seeing these similar shifts in labor and demand in global markets as a response to this 2020 crisis?
Yes, we are. And it's been really interesting to observe and partner with our customers through this. So we work with Amazon Web Services, a great example. So Amazon Web Services pivoted to virtual almost immediately and obviously have a huge growth in demand because we're all relying on that digital infrastructure.
10%.
Exactly. But what's interesting is a lot of the talent is coming from cross-border. So what we've had to solve for with them is how we find these really capable individuals, but potentially we can't relocate them yet. So and to your point earlier, that may not even be necessary to relocate them. So can we just function with an entirely virtual team wherever that talent happens to be? So that's been really interesting to see that. So actually, when you think about the way the recruiter's life has changed, their candidate control and relationship management is so important because these individuals are going to take a long time to be able to ultimately relocate, and also to make the decision to change jobs, because what we're seeing in candidate sentiment is that often during these times people are reluctant to leave a current role because they feel there's enough uncertainty in the world. So, you know, we're managing through that, but it hasn't changed the fact that the demand for that talent is extremely high. And I think all of our customers have acknowledged, in many cases pivoted for good, that they are going to have a much higher proportion of home and virtual working, and we even need to be in the same country.
And a bigger talent pool to choose from if they're not limited by searching close to the office.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also agree that, like, right now, we're in early September, those who still have a job are probably holding on to it quite dearly. And so there is not as much movement. For us, you know, we target HR executives, they're our buyers. And people are just, nobody's moving, everybody's keeping their job. And so it's hard to like start new conversations in a way. Are you feeling that too on the sales side?
It's been really interesting. So we had a very quiet period for about the first 3 months. What we are now seeing, and I think you made this point earlier, is that there is so many reasons to start talking to outsourcing partners about how you build back. So that those conversations and those sales opportunities are really starting to bubble up now. I think what is fascinating is, are there organizations that are reluctant but interested, but may not ultimately make a decision to outsource, versus those that really have a compelling set of reasons and also emotionally can get comfortable with the idea of outsourcing. So it's definitely picking up, which has been really exciting for us, but it's also trying to navigate what is a real business commitment and strategic drive to work with a partner versus a situation where I think we'll see a lot of hybrid blended solutions. So what we're finding is some organizations that intuitively want in-house are embracing outsourcing for some parts of the process or some role types, just to try and kind of understand how they're going to build out and leverage this kind of solution.
And you've been in the industry long enough, starting with Kelly Services before, and then working on helping contingent and permanent hiring at Aviva, to have seen at least one previous crisis, maybe two. Do you think that the RPO industry is going to have a very strong 2021, similar to, I guess, 2009, 2010 was a year of expansion for the industry. I think following some of the dynamics that you outlined, where people are getting more comfortable with outsourcing.
I do. I think what's interesting, and to be really transparent, is I think we'll see significant growth. The important thing is how we translate that into being profitable and sustainable. So a lot of new business coming in will demand a significant amount of investment. And so what we've been preparing for is making sure that we're financially in a great position to take on that new business. But it does take time to go from implementing and building to more business as usual with these type of programs, particularly if technology is going to play a big part in that. I think what's exciting about what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic is that organizations need to be more agile in how they implement and leverage technology. So often we're presenting a platform, but actually our customers are struggling to implement and integrate and scale into that technology solution quickly. And it'd be really interesting to see if that can speed up, because that will make a huge difference on the overall performance. So I think it'll be a very exciting year, and we've got to be really smart and savvy about who we partner with and scaling that at speed. I think you mentioned, you know, having been in this industry like 17 years plus. One of the things I think people expect is mass applications. So that came out of the last challenge from an economic perspective. There was huge volume of interested applications, and how do you manage that? And as an industry, we've pivoted to lack of talent, not having this huge funnel coming in. I don't anticipate it being quite the scale that we've seen before. But I think that's because we are more sophisticated at managing that and managing our messaging to interested candidates. Because I think what's sad for all of us is to see a high volume of applications that then results in an email telling you you've not been successful. You know, we'd rather that people were applying for jobs that were really relevant and they felt really connected to.
Yeah, but you were talking about how difficult it is to get quick results when you propose a new technology to a customer. A typical RPO contract, is that 2-3 years long?
Yeah, it's 5 in total, and it often is like a 3+2, 3+1. So particularly when we talk about that high volume space and the scale of what we're delivering to some of these customers, to do anything less often is not viable, and it makes sense to make that kind of commitment.
Yeah. So I'm curious, tech stack, you sound like you've made some bold bets on technology. What are some of the things that are working well for you this year that have picked up technologies that are helping or getting good looks from customers in 2020?
I think, and you're right, we have. And as an organization, we're very committed to tech enabled, but also acknowledging that we're not a tech business. So we need to make sure we've got partnerships with best in class solutions. And I think it's a blend of, there's some amazing stuff out there, but to what degree can it be operationalized and deployable in a time frame that really works? And also, what do we leverage as Cielo for all of our customers as a platform, and also what we have as point solutions for them. For us, a big part of the run up to what we've seen this year is things like self-scheduling and candidate control of the process. So just the basics of allowing a candidate to schedule time to have a conversation that suits them. You know, it's a really simple thing, but the back and forth is time consuming, frustrating. And so and coming through, moving to such a virtual setup, that is a given that every seniority of candidate is tending to prefer to own their time and to schedule their time in a really easy way and from a mobile, not from a desktop. The other piece of that is obviously virtual events and virtual assessment centres has been so critical. So pivoting to being able to deliver group assessments collectively and virtually, and engaging people in those kind of communities has been a big part of what we've been delivering this year.
The virtual career fairs are also a trend that's really picking up for more like graduates, university hiring. Maybe that's not something that you're more focused on, more senior hires perhaps.
It's a blend actually. So the early talent space is really critical, because what a lot of organizations did in the last recession was they removed all those programs, and then they didn't have a pipeline for high potential and their next level talent. So it's a big part of what we deliver to our customers is making sure that we understand the full life cycle and how we support with that type of hiring. And what's interesting is that some of our customers are even pivoting to doing an early talent program that is still internal mobility. So they're looking at drawing individuals from parts of their business that are perhaps quieter or struggling during this time, and actually pulling them into other parts of their business as part of an early talent program. So, and you're right, that was a big part of the tech solution that we built ahead of kind of our next generation, was being able to run these virtual events and do that really successfully and potentially across multiple countries as well.
Do you spend a lot of time, you said you used the expression best of breed solution earlier, or point solution. As a tech entrepreneur, I always have to decide whether to buy or build. And I suppose our customers are asking the same questions. Should we buy or build? And generally best practice is to buy, and buy best of breed, and then glue it up together. And that might end up with you having a number of system integration engineers on your payroll. Is that how Cielo works?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've acknowledged that we need to ensure that we're leveraging everything that's out there, and acknowledging that the way that we're efficient is making sure that we can deliver those integrations and have one source of truth. What's been really interesting when we work with customers who've built and customized, it is so challenging to be efficient and effective, and it's really tough for them to outsource, because what it then asks of us is mass amount of administration and duplicated effort.
They're not the best engineers, actually, the ones who built stuff in-house. So, and it's a slower working process.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really interesting for all of us is that we've moved talent acquisition and resourcing to the C-suite. We've made it core. We've shown the value that it brings. And outsourcing was born out of your non-core repeatable tasks. So what we've now moved the industry onto is thinking about, how do I do it well? And actually, whether you outsource or you do it in-house, you have a responsibility to do it well and effectively.
What's the most basic, sort of easiest thing to outsource if you're outsourcing phobic and you want to start to, reduce the amount of internal cost to your talent acquisition team?
That's a really interesting point. So actually, to do something at speed and to feel comfortable that you've got accountability, it's better to take something end to end and ask an outsource to work on it. One, if you start to pull pieces out of your process, you need to have a great process to then have something that you hand off and then you hand back. So in order that you don't need to redesign the entire ecosystem, what we tend to suggest is that you look at an area or a segment and you ask an outsource partner to own that end to end, because then you can hold us accountable, because there's not too much that's co-owned, and you don't necessarily have to completely redesign the process to do that.
I can see why you say that, Sally, because if they were so good at breaking down the task down to the single unique deliverable, then there's no way you're going to get any margin on that deal, right? It's just not that attractive, because they know how to run their stuff. They can run it so good they don't need you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big factor is volatility. And that's what everybody's learning, that, we've had a lot of conversations with our existing customers that we were working with before COVID, and, they have been able to take cost out by simply having this model. So it is, outsourcing is designed to be a variable cost. And so I think it's where you've got that volatility, outsourcing can really help you handle that and actually not have to go through very painful redundancy, restructuring, or frankly just have a standing team that is not fully utilized.
Yeah. And selfishly, I want to ask you, are your customers asking you for chatbots? I'm wearing my chatbot t-shirt, so.
No, it's an interesting question. So our customers ask us for innovation. They want to understand what is going to really differentiate them in the marketplace. So I don't think they're specifically asking us for chatbots. What they are asking for is agility and scale, and being able to understand where automation makes sense, where it enhances the experience, and where potentially it could be detrimental to the experience from a candidate perspective. So I think they're driving us for that thinking, not necessarily.
That detrimental idea is one of my favorite topics. What's an automation initiative that fell flat on its face, that was unable to deliver its promise? If you can go back, you don't have to name people or clients or situations. Just does that ring a bell? Or were you able to bury those memories?
I think, and this is a partial part of the process that we learned to do differently. So we have a number of high volume hiring solutions that are very much tech enabled. And what we tended to find is if we completely ran the process end to end without human interaction, we had a challenge at the back end with no-shows. And actually, when you start to really dig in, there are typically in very high volume solutions, you will have no-shows. That is not possible to eliminate. What we established was that one call or contact that was personalized between the arrangements being made and the attendance actually made a huge difference to the number of people that didn't no-show. So I think actually it was a huge success from a tech perspective, but we need to keep evolving the moment.
You went too far in one direction, and it had to you have to find, we've seen that over and over again. And it was, when we launched our technology in this area, it was the first response from people was like, sorry, it doesn't work. Because we went from all humans to all automation, and the humans outperformed the automation. And we said, well, yeah, we never told you to, we never told you to get rid of everybody. So it's been, now it's very much a big part of who we are is training the users and what we call augmenting the recruiter. Mm-hmm. And one number that we're trying to drive is number of hires per recruiter, which I guess is the ultimate productivity metric for an RPO as well.
It's hugely important, and also each time we're looking at what impact it has on the experience. So you've got to work out how many hires they do, but also how many of them stay. Let's understand what the attrition is. Let's understand all of the implications of what we do. But that's a big metric for us. And there's a level where actually there is limited benefit to going even further. So it's a bit like time to hire. Actually, how fast if you get so fast, you have to not plan. And planning and forecasting demand and workforce planning is so important for businesses to be successful. And so the more that we solve things in distress and do it really quick and we're fixers, the less planning is needed. And actually that, I think, is always it's a balance that we have to, I think, is whether you're providing a tech solution or full outsourcing, that's something we've got to really consider.
The two in opposition, planning and response time. I'd like to think that we could probably pull off both, but there is an endless number of ways of measuring. Even on something simple like time to hire, I cannot get straight answers from people because it's time to fill, from point of application to point of hire. Is it the day they came into the office or they signed a contract, etc. So there's a lot of definition that needs to happen up front. And then for the cost per lead, we have to also decline it into 10 different numbers. So we're going to do a webinar just to talk about all of that soon for our listeners. And it is as boring as it sounds. Heads up.
But it is like the nirvana of the industry. If we can get to the implications of an empty seat and to your point, it's different for every client. But actually the philosophy and the science behind that is going to transform the way we build business cases and what we choose to invest in. And I think it talks the business language as well, because to really be successful as a TA function, you've got to be able to translate the risk and the demand into a language that the business is comfortable with. So I get it's a bit dry sometimes, but I think it's hugely important for us.
Yeah, it's all about the numbers. It's a numbers game. But it used to be a people's game. It used to be you meet at the pub, you have a beer with your customer, and you negotiate, the contract renewal, and that's how you did business. With that option being removed from your workforce over the last few months, how's the morale holding up? And can you give us some practical tips on how to keep people connected while they're talking to a webcam?
No, it's an interesting point. And I think for sure, that's been a challenge for us. I think in terms of our relationship with our customers as well as our employees connecting, what we were doing ahead of this was adopting more of a daily huddle approach, like a stand-up huddle. And that's been really helpful coming through this, to actually just do 15 minutes at the start of the day with your core team members. And sometimes we talk business and we work through all the priorities for the day. Other times we just take a moment to check in, and let's hope that today, if I ask you if you're okay and how you're feeling, I want to hear the answer. And that didn't always happen before. So I think something we should take with us out of this is that we continue to do those check-ins and really listen to how people are getting on and acknowledge that they might need to talk about it being tough at home or homeschooling or all of the stuff that we've had to deal with, and making the time to do that's been really important. And we've used Yammer to connect and just talk about what we're facing and the stories that we're hearing and what we're seeing from our customers. So all of those platforms have had significantly more engagement during this time.
So Yammer is your platform of choice, and then you latch onto the platforms of your customers, your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about our employees, particularly those dedicated to a customer. They're operating both in our systems, but also in the customer. So it's on both sides that we're kind of curating information to try and help people through this and some of the new ways of working.
Yeah. Yeah, it must be quite, actually, it sounds like, for these jobs, the ones that are dedicated to a customer, the new normal is probably quite an easy transition in a way, because, so they're not so dependent on having that, the company is more of a concept rather than a building kind of thing for them.
Yeah,
it's a project.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's, I see with a lot of our customers that they've taken a long time to embrace video, to really get comfortable with it. There is often a desire to connect and meet in person, and in many cases I would support that. Doing quarterly business reviews not in person is really tough. But when you think about the way in which we connect day to day with recruiters and hiring managers, etc., being able to do that virtually just makes you have imminently more time to be able to really do what's important and what we're there to do. And so that has been a big shift and a really positive shift, because your team is anywhere. It's not because you haven't seen them in the office this week. You don't feel like they're doing work for you.
Yeah. Happy times, I guess. One tip that I read from somebody who does sales and trying to build trust with our customers is they're organizing cooking sessions, live cooking sessions over Zoom, where with a chef giving a personal cooking class to their customers, an opportunity to network while being at home doing something fun. Maybe something for the holiday seasons. But people are back in the office in London?
So we are not back in the office yet. So globally, we haven't returned to office, but what we are doing is building out a rotational process. So actually at the moment, it looks like Hungary will probably be the first location that goes back, and we'll start to do that on rotation A and B teams in terms of being able to get people into the office securely and safely. So it is.
Is your name at the top of that list or at the bottom? Where did you put yourself on that list?
So I've been going into the office in London probably once a week for about the last month, just because I wasn't a home worker before this. So it's been important to just stay kind of connected and spend some time away from home.
Well, I know how you feel. Yeah, it's good to be back when it happens. I like keeping a foot in both, but thank you for spending and putting one foot inside our podcast and spending a little bit of time with us, sharing your story and the story of Cielo going through this crisis. And I do agree, very exciting times for the RPO world. So thanks, Sally, and wishing you a very strong end of the year.
Great, and you too. I've really enjoyed it.
That was Sally Hunter from Cielo, sounding very optimistic about what the end of 2020 and 2021 has in store for the RPO industry. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to hear more, please subscribe and share with your talent acquisition friends. Thank you.